All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on something pretty wild. The immense wealth and power that's concentrated in the hands of just a few families in Kenya. We're going to explore not just who they are, but how they built these dynasties and how they continue to shape the entire country's economy.
I mean, our source material just jumps right in with this bombshell. It's a claim that suggests a level of economic control that is way beyond just normal business success. It hints at this kind of hidden architecture of power that influences, well, everything. And it immediately makes you ask.
And that's exactly what we're going to dig into. We're going to look at fortunes that were built on pure entrepreneurial spirit. We're talking serious grit, and others that were forged right in the very corridors of political power.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the entrepreneurs. These are the families who, in a lot of cases, started with next to nothing and built these massive, sprawling empires from the ground up across media, banking, and retail.
So take Samuel Kamal Macharia, or SK as pretty much everyone knows him. He was born in 1942 to a family of laborers under colonial rule. So, no silver spoon here. But through just sheer force of will, he built a media powerhouse that includes giants like Citizen TV and Kiss FM. He literally created a media dynasty worth an estimated $150 million.
And then you've got the story of James Mwangi. This guy didn't just build a bank, he completely transformed what banking was in Kenya. As the head of Equity Group, he's famous for revolutionizing access to financial services for everyday Kenyans. The people who were ignored by the big traditional banks for so long. And this whole idea of banking with a purpose goes beyond just business for them. They're deeply committed to helping communities, especially through education, and their work has won them awards all over the world.
All right, get ready for a story of some incredible highs and some devastating lows. The Sha family, famous for the Nakumatt retail chain, did not have an easy path to success. Their journey is a true business roller coaster.
Man, this timeline just says it all, doesn't it? It all started back in 1947 with a small clothing shop. But then, by 1976, a bad expansion deal forced them into bankruptcy. For most people, that would have been it. Game over. But not the Shaws. They picked themselves up, took over a tiny mattress shop, rebranded, and through pure grit, they built Nakumatt into a retail giant across East Africa. That is an absolutely stunning comeback story.
So we've seen the entrepreneurs. Now let's shift gears and talk about that tricky intersection of power and money. The next group of families have names that are, well, they're basically synonymous with the political history of Kenya itself.
This slide right here perfectly lays out the two absolute titans of Kenyan politics. On one side, you've got the Odinga family. Their legacy is built on a long history of political opposition, led by Raila Odinga, who's the son of Kenya's first vice president. And on the other side, you have the Kenyata family, who are the very definition of the political establishment, descended from the nation's first president, Jomo Kenyatta. And their story involves sprawling business interests that are deeply, deeply tied to their political power.
And it's important to mention, our sources certainly do, that the Kenyata family's finances have been put under the microscope. The Pandora Papers leak, for example, brought offshore investments connected to the family into the spotlight, which definitely adds another layer of complexity to their story of wealth.
And speaking of that kind of scrutiny over vast fortunes, well, that brings us to the very top, the absolute apex of power and money in Kenya. We are now moving into fortunes so massive, they are on a completely different level.
The late Nicholas Biwott. Now, he was a seriously powerful and often really mysterious figure in Kenyan politics. His business deals were usually kept pretty quiet, but his assets were huge, including Nairobi's famous Yaya Center. His family's fortune is estimated at a mind-boggling $1 billion.
And then there's the Moy family. Just take a second and look at that number. $3 billion. That's the estimated net worth of the family of Kenya's second president, Daniel Arap Moi. But the story behind this jaw-dropping fortune is deeply controversial. And here's the kicker, right from our source material. This incredible wealth is tied to some really serious allegations. We're talking about findings of bribery, WikiLeaks revelations about a complex web of shell companies used to move money around, and connections to the infamous Goldenberg scandal, a scheme that siphoned off billions from the state and almost collapsed Kenya's entire economy in the 90s.
So we've looked at these individual stories, entrepreneurship, politics, controversy. What does it all add up to? Let's zoom out for a second and try to get the big picture of how wealth is concentrated in the country.
Wow, this chart really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? You've got your successful empire builders like the Chandaria family, then you take a huge leap up to the political dynasties like the Kenyata family. But then both of those are just completely dwarfed by the staggering fortune of the Moy family. The gap isn't just big, it's a chasm. It just goes to show you the incredible concentration of wealth at the very, very top.
And all of this brings us to our final thought. From pure entrepreneurial grit to inherited political power and deep-seated controversy, the stories of these families are really, in a lot of ways, the story of modern Kenya's economy. So the question we're left with is this: what does it mean for a country's future when its economic destiny is so profoundly shaped by just a handful of names?